How would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, bowel biologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
This episode of Healthy Home Hacks is brought to you by Boren, world leader in homeopathic medicines. Is stress overload causing you some sleepless nights? Do you want to rest easier by supporting your body with a better way to feel better? For 90 years, Boren has been dedicated to providing your family with the purest medicines made from the Earth's best resources. Boren's Sleep Calm for adults and kids are melatonin-free sleep aids with no next-day grogginess. The melt-away tablets for adults and individual liquid doses for kids are non-habit-forming and have no drug interactions. From stress to sleep, pain relief, allergies, and more, Boren has got you and your family covered with affordable homeopathic remedies that are easy to find online and in natural product stores nationwide. Help your body the natural way with gentle, worry-free formulas for even the littlest ones in your family. Visit borenusa.com, that's BOIRONUSA.com, to find the nearest retailer, or buy direct using code RL20OFF. That's RL20OFF to save 20% off your entire purchase.
The American people have a right to air that they and their children can breathe without fear. Lyndon B. Johnson. But are you breathing in clean air in your own home? Let me ask you this. Do you currently suffer from any of these symptoms? Headaches, fatigue, sore eyes, allergies, respiratory issues, flu-like symptoms, asthma, compromised immunity, or even cancer?
If so, your home's indoor air could be to blame. But are you just treating the symptoms, or are you focusing on identifying and addressing the root cause of your illness? Considering that the average person takes between 17 and 23,000 breaths of air each day and spends 90% of their time indoors, it's essential to know what the heck you and your loved ones are breathing in daily. Indoor air quality, or IAQ, consists of temperature, humidity, ventilation, and chemical or biological contaminants that can affect your overall health. You and your family, and yes, even your beloved pet, could be breathing in high levels of volatile organic compounds like cancer-causing xylene, benzene, and formaldehyde, as well as asthma irritants, dangerous fumes like radon, smog, and smoke, phthalates, plasticizers, phenols, flame retardants, and carbon monoxide, asbestos, lead, or mold spores.
Today, we're gonna dive deep undercover to find out what's really lurking in your home's air. Every day, we hear about the possible hidden dangers lurking in and around our homes. The list of potential dangers and risks is overwhelming and may have you reaching for the nearest gas mask or hazmat suit. Fear not, friends. Our guest today is going to clear the air.
Tim Swackhammer is the founder and CEO of Mold Medics and Mold Medics Franchising. Mold Medics is dedicated to helping people improve the environmental quality of their homes through mold remediation, air duct cleaning, radon mitigation, and other environmental services. They offer franchise opportunities as well across the U.S.
Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you guys very much for having me on.
And by the way, I love your last name. Swackhammer, that is the most unique name in the world. I know we talked about this earlier. It's a German name, right?
Yep.
Swackhammer.
I appreciate that.
Swackhammer. Swack, not
Oh,
Schwack.
Swack.
Yeah,
Okay.
Swack. Yep.
Swack.
Okay.
Welcome, Tim Swackhammer. We are so thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you guys very much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. We love this topic. And to be honest, we really haven't dove this deep into some of the things we're going to discuss today. So let's get started. Now, Tim, for someone listening who sees or suspects mold in their home, and I know you listeners out there, there's a lot of you, how do they know if they truly do have a mold issue?
Right. So this is one of the questions we get literally multiple times a day. 7 days a week is just, they think they have a problem. They suspect there may be an issue. How do they really know what's going on? How can they determine what the issue is? And then it goes into what can they do about it? So there's really a couple of different things that you can do to identify if you have a mold issue. The first thing that's going to tell you more than anything right out of the gate is the smell. Use your nose. We've all been in those situations.
Your nose knows.
Absolutely.
You're a know-it-all.
All been in those situations where we smell just that musty type odor whenever we walk into a place. In most cases, that's going to be indicative of some sort of underlying issue going on. So that's generally going to be your first indication that you got a mold issue. And really what you're smelling there is you're smelling some of the spores, you're smelling just the stale air that comes with that lack of proper ventilation, lack of proper air movement, and just that growth that can occur over time. So identifying that just with your nose can be really essential. And that's generally going to be one of the first indicators that people get that there may be a mold problem.
Hey, Tim, have you noticed a lot of your customers that have noticed what might be an odd smell or something generally are the women of the home? The man is pretty oblivious.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's always one party that's definitely way more sensitive to the other. And I would say 80% of the time, it's going to be the woman in the household that's going to notice these things.
You're being very diplomatic. It's probably 99%.
We're
You'd
just
be surprised.
Keen.
There's
Keen senses.
Yeah. And there's the crazy thing with mold too, there's different levels of sensitivity. So every individual is going to react in a little bit different of a way. And there are some people that are just going to be a lot more sensitive and they're going to notice those things very, very quickly when they walk into a property. And others you can just naturally be more oblivious to it. They're not affected. They don't react in the same way. So yeah, most of the time it's definitely going to be the wife. Mm-hmm. But occasionally we do get husbands that react very quickly and wives that just seem to be a little bit more resilient there.
Yeah, depending on your toxic load, your immune system and all of that. Now, you could also not smell anything, right? I mean, you could actually not see or smell and have a mold problem. Yeah. I think that's really important for listeners to know because that's common too, that maybe it's hidden. The mold is hidden. And so you might not actually see any sign of water damage or anything like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the visual component's going to be the big one because obviously if you go in and you see what looks like mold growth, I mean, it could be a couple other things, but most likely, especially if you see some water component, you're probably looking at a mold issue. You're probably not looking at the complete mold issue. And there's definitely likely to be some other issues there that aren't immediately apparent. But the visual component's going to give you a big red flag that you got something going on. But to your point, some people react just physically. They don't necessarily have the smell per se, but they can feel it in their eyes, their sinuses, and can immediately start having that reaction. Again, it all depends on your individual environment, your history, your biology.
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out too, that if one person is feeling ill by their home, right? Just one person, there can be a problem there, right? Because like we all have different thresholds of basically withstanding what might be an irritant in the air or in the environment. And it still can be what is quote unquote a sick building. But your home can be a sick building, right? And that might be the canary in the house, right? So do you encounter that a lot too? There might be one member in the family and everyone else seems fine, but one is really suffering.
Yep. We see that quite a bit. And we also see a similar situation where people are moving into a home and there might have been a family living there before, maybe just a couple, husband, wife, but the prior occupants had no symptoms, no issues, nothing.
Yeah.
And then somebody new moves into that house and they've got a different system and they notice it immediately.
Interesting. So is it safe to live in a house with mold?
So in general,
yes, have a party. Have a mold party.
That's a test question, Tim.
So there's a couple of components to that I think are really important for people to understand. This is kind of a loaded question. It seems obvious at first glance, like, is it safe to live in a house with mold? Well, no, but every single house has some level of mold in it. Just every bit of outside air you breathe has some level of mold in it. Anytime you open the windows, open the doors, you're going to be getting some of that in there. The key thing is identifying when it gets to that problematic level. And then what do we do about that? Because mold's naturally occurring. It's going to be in nature. It does a important job of breaking down dead plant materials. So all the leaves, dead trees outside, all that kind of stuff, mold's there to break that down. The problem is we build our houses out of dead plant material. It will also start working on the inside. And then that's where we can start to have negative reactions.
Yeah.
I've never heard for spray.
Mold needs a food source, right? Mold needs a food source, which is our organic materials like drywall. What other things would it eat?
Yeah. So, I mean, most of the components that we use to build homes can be some sort of food for molds. So you figure the paper on the drywall, any wood product or manufactured wood product. So whether it be actual...
They like that formaldehyde. They like that formaldehyde laden particle board.
Yum, yum.
They love the glue.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is a big component. And also it's allowed to, if you think about like if you've got a solid piece of lumber in your home and you do have a significant mold problem, it gets water damage, that kind of thing. Typically what you're going to see is you'll see the water start to penetrate from the cut end first because it's able to get into the pores of the wood there. But it's generally, you might get some surface growth on like the side, but you're not going to get a lot of penetration into the wood on that end.
Okay.
But then whenever we move to a lot of these manufactured products that we have now, your MDF, particle board, plywood, these are all basically various scraps of wood that are then glued together.
Right.
But the problem is water is able to move straight through them. MDF, for instance, acts like a sponge. As soon as it gets wet, it's just going to start swelling up. And then the mold's able to penetrate through the entire substrate, which is
the house.
Much more problematic. Yep.
Yeah, right. It moves fast. Okay, so the $1 million question everybody wants to know, what is black mold?
So black mold, Stachybotrys is the technical name for it. And it is a certain type of mold that has been associated with the most severe health effects of any of the molds that are out there. Now, it's not to say that any molds are good to have in your home, and some of the most common can be allergenic for people. The molds in the Aspergillus and Penicillium family, for instance, are really, really common, and they can cause pretty significant health impacts. But black mold in particular, people are very aware of, at least on the outside. They've seen it, they've heard of it. It does generally have a dark color.
They've watched a Dateline episode or two.
Yes, absolutely. And what makes black mold a bit unique is it takes a long time to grow through significant water intrusion. So this is something that's going to generally be from basement flooding. It's going to occur from leaks. Probably the most common horror story that we see is leaks inside a wall that people don't notice.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Yep, a perfect one. And this actually happened with one of our neighbors. We helped resolve the issue, but the previous homeowner installed a set of speakers in their basement. And they didn't know whenever they had installed them, they put a screw right through a drain.
Oh. Wow.
That's screwy. That's screwy, Tim. It really is.
That seems like something that could easily happen, huh?
It can.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So, I mean, typically they're supposed to be recessed far enough in the wall that it's not going to be an issue. And whenever they're moving through a stud, through code, they're supposed to put nail plates in place to keep those things from happening. But the problem is you get a lot of DIY situations, people using, in this case, way longer screws than they needed to actually hang that.
Got it.
And all of a sudden it's going deeper than it should. And you're not careful. You don't know what to look for. It's going into that. And the problem there is they would have done that, say, in a pressurized water line, like one that's going up to provide your hot or cold water for the home. Most likely you would notice it pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's generally going to rupture and water's going to start squirting out and it'll be fairly apparent. In a drain line, though, it's not pressurized or anything. So it's only whenever they're using whatever fixture that's supporting.
Right.
It's not a constant thing. So it's just coming through kind of occasionally. Then it starts to grow on the backside of that drywall and starts at the bottom and works its way up.
Yeah.
And typically a homeowner won't notice that until it's seeped all the way through the drywall. And what do you have at the bottom of your wall? You've got baseboard. So it has to go up above the baseboard before you actually begin to get any visual notice on this side.
Houston, you've got a problem at that point.
Yes. Yep. That's the key situation where we open up the wall and it's way worse than what the homeowner originally.
Nightmare. Every homeowner's nightmare. Yeah.
For sure.
Because then you're talking like a lot of money to remediate.
It definitely gets to be a lot more significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very common question we get too. So, and especially in regards to, you just mentioned that mold problem with the screw going into the pipe. What is mold remediation and how is it different from mold removal?
Yeah, so we get this one a lot too. It's really comes down to traditionally, there's unfortunately not a real clear definition, but generally whenever we're talking about mold removal, it's typically going to be referred to as more of a DIY process. So it's going to be people actually going in and removing whatever the contaminated issue is. But really, whenever we get into mold remediation, This is where we get into industry definitions. The IICRC S520 identifies the specific protocols that need to be followed. And really with mold remediation, it is a multi-step process to make sure that it's done correctly. We're not just going in and, oh, that's black, so let's just tear it out and be on our way. Mm-hmm. We're setting up proper containment. We're testing. We are making sure that the air is not contaminating other areas of the home. Yeah. We're using specialized equipment like HEPA vacuums to clean all the surfaces, making sure that any contaminated materials are being properly contained before we get them out of the space. So unfortunately, a DIY mold removal project can a lot of times cause much bigger issues because you just open something up, you stir it up. At least if you have an issue going on, like that example before, where it's mostly contained inside that wall cavity, it's contained there for the most part. I mean, obviously, you are going to get some that's going to filter into the rest of the house. But once you open that up and you stir that up, now you can really take a small problem and make it a really big one if you're not careful.
Yeah, right. We see that a lot. I'm sure you must see this all the time. You know, people, they want to save a couple bucks and they think they can do it themselves. And on the surface, they might actually think they handled the problem, right? Everything looks fine, put in a little fresh coat of paint and back to business. Little do they know their mold's still growing in the background. And they haven't gotten rid of the source of the problem, right? I mean, that's a big thing, is get to the source of the water intrusion.
Yes.
Okay, so homeowners, is this true? You need the mold to be 10 square feet or more before you really bring in the pros. If it's under 10?
So that's the general EPA guidance. And there's a variety of reasons that is the way that it is. It really is very, very situational. And the trouble comes down to a lot of times whenever we get these kind of questions, they're from people who are mold sensitive. They're from people who have a history of exposure to mold. And we've got a history of other similar issues like chronic inflammatory response syndrome, where they tend to react very strongly to different issues, which is why they're more concerned and they want to make sure it's done right. Mm-hmm. And the knee-jerk reaction, and I get it myself, is if you want to do anything right, do it yourself. The problem here is we have...
Don't do heart surgery on yourself. Don't. Exactly. There's some things you don't do yourself.
Absolutely. And I get it because unfortunately in a lot of areas, mold remediation can be the Wild West. There's not a lot of state regulation depending on where you are. There's not a lot of federal regulation, if any. In some cases, you don't need any sort of certification or anything to be able to start performing mold remediation.
Yeah. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary. So yeah, you need to look for those certifications when they come and referrals and how long have they been in business.
Experience. Right? Yep. Make sure that they are registered contractors, all those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Tim, you're in the trenches. Do you have any war stories you can share with us? Like one story in particular of like a horror story of mold in a home that might be fun listening to?
He just told us his neighbor.
Well, that's true. That's pretty close. That's pretty close to home. Yeah, the nail. That was bad. Okay. I wasn't sure if you... Okay.
I mean, we definitely have some others. There's some that we've gone into that have been absolutely horrific. And most of them are ones that we end up not even really doing. In a lot of cases, it ends up with the home being torn down.
I was going to say, does that happen where it's too bad that you have to demolish?
Yeah, I mean, there's one, whenever you said horror story, that's permanently ingrained in my memory. They had some sort of severe roof leak. I can't remember the exact circumstance, but they had a massive amount of water going into this property that was vacant for about a year. And so they had no idea what was going on. And you walked in there and every single surface was covered in thick green mold. I mean, it was brutal. The image that's permanently in my brain is they had a taxidermy deer in there that was just completely...
That's bad enough without the mold.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was a rough one, to say the least.
Oh my God. What kind of mold was that?
To be honest, we did not do testing on it. And I don't think we had samples from it. It was one of those, we got contacted by, I believe it was somebody who inherited the property. And they were just like, hey, we think we got a mold problem. What can you do about it? We walk into that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You would have run out of test kits, particularly if there were certain, right? You'd have been like, wow.
Well, in that case, was it repairable or did they have to tear down that house?
No. So that one, they ended up deciding to tear it down. And,
okay. Wow.
And I think they sold off the land independently.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Well, people don't want to get to this point where their house becomes infested so much that the head of their deer is covered in mold. So
please don't put deers on your wall.
And first of all, I'm assuming it's a fake deer, right?
We're vegan, so
that's right.
I'm offended by the deer more than the mold.
But this kind of is a segue. So what tips do you have for someone listening who wants to prevent mold growth in their home?
Yeah, so this is a great one. And this is something that in our educational pieces, we really try to hammer on because as the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We would much rather prevent an issue from coming up in the first place. It's going to be easier. It's going to be less expensive. It's going to be better for everybody in the long run. So the first and kind of biggest thing is keep a clean home.
Yeah.
So, and I know that sounds kind of basic, but you'd be shocked at the number of issues that we see that there's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of...
People have clutter.
They've got a lot of clutter. They've got... One of the biggest things we see, we've got a lot of basements around here. People will have all kinds of things stored in cardboard boxes in their basement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right up against the foundation wall. If you have a subterranean basement, chances are it's going to get a little damp at times. And those boxes just create a sponge. Mm-hmm. Mold absolutely loves it because it's an organic material. So it's going to grow on it very, very quickly. And there's no air movement behind them because they've got them packed tight up against the wall because they want them out of the way.
Yeah.
And you've created a situation now where you can have a significant mold problem going on that, again, you're completely unaware of. And if you would have done some basic stuff like using plastic bins instead and putting them on storage racks where they've got an air gap so there's air allowed to move through,
right?
Chances are you're not going to have that issue.
That is a great tip. I know, because a lot of people think a clean house is, it's a type A person that needs to keep their house tidy. No, it's actually so good for your health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A clean home is a healthy home. If you're using non-toxic cleaners, that is.
Yep.
Side note there. But yeah, you can have dust. Dust is very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a lot of clutter, you're going to accumulate dust. And then there's the energy aspect too, which is a whole nother show we've done on the energy of clutter is very, very toxic to your stress and your emotional well-being. But I do want to pivot to something very important. And listeners, do you know what the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers and the second leading among smokers is? It's invisible but deadly and is a known human carcinogen that poses a very serious health danger to those who are exposed to it. If you guessed radon, you'd be correct. Nearly 1 in 15 homes in the US has a radon level that should be reduced. So Tim, explain to our listeners what radon is and how it gets into our homes.
Yeah, so radon is a gas that comes from the soil underneath our homes. So it comes up from the Earth's crust. It's part of the radioactive decay of uranium that exists in the soil. So as that goes through the decay cycle, if you go back to your chemistry classes and stuff in high school, eventually radon is one of the products that uranium will break down into. And the problem with radon, it's a gas. It is radioactive. It's going to continue to decay. And when it does that, it emits these alpha particles that can cause radiation damage. And alpha particles, they don't travel very far, very deep through tissue. But what happens, we breathe it in and our very sensitive lung tissue gets damaged by these alpha particles through the radon. And that's what over time can cause cancer. And especially if you're a smoker, it's going to make your lungs a lot weaker. It's going to contribute to that and cause lung cancer a lot sooner than otherwise. Right. So it's a big issue. And it's something that unfortunately not a lot of people are aware of.
Right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get a lot of attention. And, you'll hear people say, oh, my aunt or someone was just diagnosed with lung cancer. And the first question people say is, oh, was she a smoker? And then sometimes you hear, no. I always go, radon. It's got to be radon, right? Because it is invisible, like a lot of these hazards we talk about on the show, EMFs or these invisible VOCs and radon. You don't see them. So it's really easy to say out of sight, out of mind. Oh gosh, what could have caused that? I have no idea. People don't connect their environment, which is, like I said at the top, where we spend 90% of our time. So it's so important to pay attention to all of these things. So how do we know if we have radon? How can we avoid it in our homes?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, it's colorless, it's odorless. You can't see it. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. You can't feel it. You have no way of really knowing through your natural olfactory senses whatsoever. So unlike mold, where you can have some indications, radon's something that simply you have to test. Period.
You have to test. Yeah.
That's the only way to.
When you buy a new home, when you buy a home, period, is that legal that they have to test for that? Or is that something you have to pay out of pocket for extra?
Check your local listings. It varies greatly state by state.
Oh, it does.
Some areas have pretty strict requirements on it. Some have none whatsoever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Everywhere in between.
Yeah. And I know radon has been found in every state across the US, but it's more prevalent, right? In the north and the east.
So Northeast is a pretty big area. If you go online, the EPA has a variety of different maps that will show you different state by state what the relative risk level is for radon, as well as a lot of the departments of environmental protection. For instance, here in Pennsylvania, you can go onto the PA DEP website and you can see county by county and zip code by zip code what the highest recorded reading was, what the lowest reading was, or not lowest, but average. So you can get a pretty good indication. The big warning I would put out there with that is radon levels in homes are very, very, very situational to the individual home. So a lot of it comes down to how the home is built and what the geology is underneath that home, which just because something we hear very frequently is, oh, well, I heard about radon, but my neighbor tested a year or two ago and they were fine. So we're probably
right.
Well, good for them,
and
right?
And because we see these maps and we see that, okay, regionally, some are worse than others, it's natural to assume, okay, well, if my neighbor is good, I'm probably good.
Yeah.
We did a study on this in just my actual neighborhood. And these are all homes that were built at the same time, same builder, same construction methods. So it's a really good example. And what we found was over 5 homes that are all basically next to each other across the street, the lowest radon level was 3.8 picocuries per liter, and the highest was almost 18.
Oh, gosh.
Massive disparity.
Massive.
And the EPA action level is 4 picocuries per liter.
Right.
So
so if you have 4 picocuries per liter of air, you need to bring in a professional or test, or I'm sorry, get a professional, because at that point it needs to be remediated. Can you kind of explain what's involved with that if you do have radon?
Absolutely. So for one thing, whenever it comes to radon, it's actually mitigation, not remediation. And that's a common misunderstanding, because with mitigation, we're never going to remove the radon from the environment. That's never going to be possible.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're trying to mitigate it. We want to avoid it damaging people in the home. So basically that's done by the most common method is a subslab depressurization system, which is basically a PVC pipe goes through the slab of the home, and then that gets run up and out and up above the roof. So
now your neighbors can have that. Now you can send it to your neighbors.
Well, so it used to be the case that they would actually just run them up and there's a radon fan that's put in line. So basically what it does is it puts underneath your foundation under a suction. So any of those soil gases go up through that pipe instead of coming up through the cracks in your basement.
Yeah.
And it used to be the case that they would just run it outside right at ground level. And you still see this in some states where there's not regulation on it. You open a window right above that and you're just sucking all that right back in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Jeez. I mean, is it safe once it gets to a certain height? Does it just dissipate so much it's harmless?
At that point, it's been diluted to the point where if it were able to make its way back down, it's going to come with so much fresh air that you're not really going to notice it.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem is in our homes, they're subject to what's called the stack effect. They basically act like big chimneys. So there's a lot of suction that takes place that basically pulls in these soil gases through cracks in the foundation and everything. And that's where we basically trap ourselves in an airtight box.
Yeah. We like to make our buildings tight and energy efficient. And then we get all these kinds of indoor air problems, which is why we're doing this show today, guys.
For sure. So I know radon itself is invisible for us to detect if it's there, right? Unless we get testing.
Yep.
But I know people can probably wondering, what are the symptoms of radon exposure?
Yeah. So the symptoms for radon exposure are going to be the same symptoms that you'd have from basically any significant lung damage. So it's going to be wheezing, breathing, respiratory problems. There can start to be some sinus issues potentially, but really most of it's going to revolve around lung damage. The problem here is the only symptom you're going to notice is the actual damage itself. So it takes a long time. With most environmental issues, the concern is not, okay, I was in a place that had a high radon level once, and then you're damaged from it. It's almost always going to be exposure over time. So that chronic exposure.
We've probably all been, right? We've probably all been in places unknowingly, whether it is a neighbor or even a commercial space, right? Potentially where we had exposure and just didn't know it.
Yep. But whenever you look at homes, and that's why the big concern is with homes, you're spending long periods of time over many, many years in that space, and being subjected to that's really where the damage is just going to begin to accumulate.
Right. Wow. This is such an important topic because nobody talks about radon. I mean, you just really don't hear about it. So I'm a homeowner. I'm listening to this call today and I'm like, I think I'm going to check it. Do I order a test through my state or should I hire someone to come out and test it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different testing methods available. There are DIY kits, there's professional testing. Unfortunately, the most common type of testing is the worst, and that's going to be short-term tests. Short-term tests are going to be anything that's 2 to 7 days. It can be done through a charcoal canister, like you can get through your state or Lowe's, Home Depot. And same thing, continuous radon monitors, which are what we use as professionals commonly, where it's going to give you like an hour by hour reading of your radon levels. The problem with these short-term tests is they're short-term. It's just a window. It's only telling you these were the radon levels during these days. And over the course of the year, the radon levels can vary greatly because sometimes the weather outside can impact it, the difference in pressures between the inside of the home, the outside of the home. How much are your windows open? Are you running your HVAC system? How much fresh air are you ventilating? All those things can really have a big impact on your radon levels. So the problem with a short-term test, you can test during a time that's unnaturally low for your home and think that it's not a problem. And then eventually you get it retested maybe during a more normal time and realize that it was a problem. And chances are it has been for that whole time.
Oh, wow.
So how do you test it then? So do you have to test it like 3 times a year or
no? So there's
you're having breathing issues, right? If you're having respiratory issues, you really should look into this. And if it is a couple times,
So you can do multiple short-term tests, but what's actually preferred is long-term testing. So these are tests that are generally going to be 30 days up to a year. And historically, they've been not very common, but we're starting to see more and more. It's actually one of the big evolutions in smart home devices. We are seeing more of those that are doing radon testing as well.
Yes, you're right. I think AirThings, I know.
AirThings is one of the big ones.
Okay, AirThings. And I saw that on your site, and we've actually worked with them too. So that's a home air monitor, which is really great, and will alert you via your app on your phone, right?
So they've got some really good ones. EcoSense is another one. The great thing with these is these have been moving down in price significantly.
Yeah.
We've done some tests against our professional testing devices, and they're pretty darn close, at least close enough to let you know, do we have a significant issue or do we not?
I mean, I think this is going to be standard in homes eventually, where we have air monitoring devices for everything. I know we work with IQ Air. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Okay. Yeah, they're amazing. Incredible air purifiers, guys. If you're listening and you're looking for the Mac Daddy, as we call it, they have an air monitoring device too. And I just feel like between, all these chemicals, because the problem today is that we have so many more chemicals than we've ever had in existence. And we have so many unregulated chemicals. And we're bringing these chemicals into our home through our cleaning products, our pesticides, our furnishings, our carpeting, our surfaces, our building materials, insulation, the list goes on. And like you said, we're in these tightly sealed buildings today because of energy efficiency. Our bills, are going down, but the toxic exposure, our toxic load is going up.
Wait, they were going down. The bills were.
Yeah. This is 2022. Let me edit that. They were.
And you're 100% right. And we're spending more time indoors than we ever.
Yeah, right. Especially
less and less common.
Yeah. After COVID, it's like everyone got used to being at home and now nobody wants to go back to work. Or they definitely want to work from home. Yeah. Those investments are investments in your health. And I know sometimes people, that out of sight, out of mind, I don't want to spend money on that, but we're talking like your long-term health and longevity, especially your children, and even pets. Pets get affected by all of these chemicals and allergens and toxins. Allergies are on the rise right now. Asthma is on the rise. And maybe, just maybe, it's your environment. Maybe it's not genetics, which is chances are it's probably your environment.
Tim, so before we go, I was just curious, what's the typical price point of this long-term analysis?
Continuous radon testing. Yeah. How much would someone pay for that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the AirThings, the least expensive monitor, I got one of them to play around with and had good results from it. Those are available for about $100.
Oh, wow. So you can buy your own
on Amazon.
Okay.
Yep. There are long-term tests that are available as well that are just a set period of time. They had a great place in the market before a lot of these more continuous monitors were available. But at this point, I would probably go that route. If you're just a general homeowner who's concerned and wants to identify, that's probably the place I would start. It's going to be pretty inexpensive. It's going to give you a good indication of if it's working or what the levels are in your home. And then also, once you have a mitigation system installed, you do want to continue to monitor the levels because now we've installed a mechanical system in that has potential for failure. The fans don't last forever.
Yeah.
You could have a power surge where one of the breakers trips and now your radon fan's not operating.
Okay.
Being able to continually monitor those is important. Yeah.
Yeah. I just shout out to changing those filters, whether it's your air purifier filter, your HVAC filter, your water filter. And how about our air ducts, Tim? I mean, air duct cleaning in the past kind of got a bad rap. Mm-hmm. So explain to our listeners why, and should we be doing these air duct cleaning? And if so, how often?
Yeah. So it's definitely something that can be important for improvement of your indoor air quality, for sure. The rest of the question really comes down to individual situation. So it's something that generally organizations like NADCA, National Air Duct Cleaning Association, they're going to recommend that you have at least an inspection every 2 years.
Okay.
And from there, it's really going to depend on your individual situation. For instance, up until recently, unfortunately, he passed away over the weekend, but I had a long-coated shepherd.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear.
Thank you. Yeah. And the amount of dander and hair that he produced on a consistent basis was staggering. And especially in our main living space where he spent most of his time, we had floor registers. So it would just accumulate in there very, very quickly. I obviously have kind of an in on the air duct cleaning side, so I would do mine at least once a year.
Okay.
And we would get good amounts of stuff out of there. But if you're generally keeping a clean home every 2 years plus, at least get them looked at and identify if a cleaning is going to be necessary.
Oh, okay. So they'll come out and tell you if you even need it.
Yeah, good companies will. And unfortunately, air duct cleaning did get a bad rap and still has it because there is a plethora of scams out there.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a variety. I mean, we've done a couple blog posts on it and videos on it where probably seen these if you're on Facebook. They have all kinds of scams going out where they advertise small business special and some ridiculous low price for duct cleaning services. And they're either bait and switch where they'll come out and then tell you, oh yeah, by the way, it's actually going to be, instead of $199, it's going to be $1,500.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got whatever going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Or they'll come out and pretend that they're doing something and really they don't.
I see. Yeah, because you don't know. You're like, hey,
source.
Right. Vetting. I mean, this could be the theme of our show is because we talk about certifications with products and personal care. You have to vet everything nowadays. You have to, everyone's a business owner. We have so many entrepreneurs today and small businesses that more people in the marketplace, vetting becomes more and more important. So what are the tests that you would say, like everybody listening right now should be doing in their home, whether it's air, and at what point do they do it or hire someone like you to do that?
Sure. So, I mean, assuming you're not aware of and don't suspect a problem, you're not having health implications from it or anything, I would recommend always still radon testing. Okay. Because again, until the damage is done, you don't really know that it's there or if you've tested. So definitely radon testing through one of the methods that we talked about. I would strongly recommend. The other big one I would recommend is not testing as much as monitoring. And that's going to be monitoring your indoor humidity levels. That's probably one of the biggest preventable ones that we see people, especially like around here over the summer, they will go away for vacation and they'll shut down their HVAC system because they want to save on the expense. And humidity levels just rise. And they come back and they have an issue.
Yeah. Wet carpet.
Yeah. And it'll start to the humidity will start to gather on certain surfaces throughout the home and it'll cause a problem. A few years ago, there was a number of schools that basically did that over the summer. They shut down all the HVAC system. And then we had a particularly damp and humid summer and came back and had some pretty significant mold issues.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you're in the Pittsburgh area for those who are curious.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So, and then what else would you say? Anything?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely radon, definitely humidity. From there, I do really like a lot of the smart air monitors that are available. So again, there's a bunch of different companies, but these are going to monitor carbon monoxide levels. They're going to monitor certain VOCs. Those can be a really good indication. Again, another story. We had a contractor come in whenever we finished our basement. We had to move our hot water tank. So they moved it, but whenever they did that, they didn't hook up the exhaust correctly.
Oh, no.
And I came home from work the one day and I noticed in our kitchen, which is right above like our utility room, it felt stuffy, it felt humid. And sure enough, I go downstairs and it had disconnected. And all of that humid exhaust air was coming out from our hot water tank. And was just being exhausted in the basement, which can cause significant carbon monoxide issues. So immediately after that, I should have known better, but I wasn't thinking about it. We got carbon monoxide detectors in every single room of the house because that's not something you mess around with.
Yeah, carbon monoxide, that can be a faulty installation of gas appliances and your car exhaust, even if you have an attached garage. And they're really inexpensive. Those little plug-in detectors. I don't know if that's what you use. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, now that you say it, I think we have one and I don't know if it's enough to cover all the square footage. We probably should you have one on every floor as a good rule of thumb?
Personally, I have one on every floor and I've got one in every bedroom too.
Oh, you have one in, bedrooms.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Just to be safe.
Yeah. Why mess around?
I guess we're buying more, Tim. Thanks.
I guess we're going shopping. But I think the state of California, they require it attached to our smoke detector now.
Yeah,
right?
state of California requires a lot more of that. I'm not sure what their exact regulations are.
Yeah, so we might have it built in. We'll find out. We'll find out. All right, guys. Well, this was incredible, Tim. Thank you so much. We covered so much ground. So important, guys. Pay attention. Hopefully you weekend warriors make this a project and, just kind of do a checklist around your house and see what you need to add, what you might be missing, what you should be testing. So thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. It was really great talking with you.
Oh, yeah, so much. And thank you for being with us. If you'd like to learn more about Tim and Mold Medics, visit moldmedics.com, where you can find out more about their franchising and their services in the Pennsylvania area, including mold testing and remediation, air duct cleaning, radon services, home and office disinfection, and even locate a functional medicine doctor. This is really important if you are suffering from diseases like chronic inflammatory response syndrome, Lyme disease, or mold sensitivity.
You can also learn more about mold and find recommended products such as indoor air quality monitors, which we talked about. I'll have all the links in the show notes at ronalisa.com/podcast. And get ready to up-level your health. See you then. Bye.
See ya. This wraps season 3. We're taking a short break and we'll see you at the end of August. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Tim.
Bye. Thank you.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.